everybody. This is OJ Watley from secondtime.com, and I'm your host for another special episode of Watch in the Box. But today's episode is not so much watch in the box as much as it is watches in the box. And I'm going to take you on a very special tour introducing you to the Rolex universe and the colorful cast of characters that occupy that universe. I'm going to talk to you today about 11 very special Rolex watches, how they got their nicknames, and how to tell them apart from one another. So without further ado, here goes. And there they are, ladies and gentlemen. But let's get a shot of all of them, and then I'll introduce you to them one at a time. So here we have 10 Rolex watches. Whoops, the 11th is actually on my wrist. Sorry about that, people. Sorry, and this was a special character too. So in our top row tray, we have 6 very special Rolex GMTs. Starting from the left, we have the Rolex GMT Master 2 stainless steel and 18 karat rose gold, AKA root beer. I bet you can guess why they call it the root beer, can't you? Check out those brown, black, and cream accents. The Rolex GMT Master 2 root beer has been in production for over 35, even 40 years, I think. This one is the most recent root beer with oyster bracelet and ever rose gold accents and rose gold bezel. So that's the Rolex root beer. Next to the Rolex root beer, we have the Batman and Batgirl. The first one is the Batgirl. The second one is the Batman. Now, most people, if they look at a GMT Master 2 with a black and blue bezel, they automatically think Batman. And while that is true, the distinction between the Batman and the Batgirl is that the Batgirl has the Jubilee bracelet, whereas the oyster bracelet is the Batman. So yeah, you could call a Batgirl a Batman, but technically, you'd be better off calling it a Batgirl, and everybody would know it would be on a Jubilee bracelet. Moving to the right, we've got the Rolex GMT Master 2 18 karat white gold Superman. So why is this the Superman and not a Pepsi? Well, technically it's a Pepsi because it has a red and blue ceramic bezel. The reason we call it the Superman is because of that gorgeous blue dial. In fact, this is the only GMT Master 2 that's available with that blue dial is the white gold 126719 Superman GMT Master 2. Check out that blue dial, man. Just awesome. Moving to our left, we've got the original GMT Master 2 Pepsi. Pepsi because it's got a blue and red bezel, and on this variation, we're looking at a Jubilee bracelet, and we're looking at a pre-ceramic Pepsi with the aluminum bezel insert. The nice thing about these models were there were 3 different inserts. There was a black on black, which gave it the look of a Submariner. There was a red on blue, so-called Pepsi, and then there was even a black and red, so-called Coke. And all these bezels here, these bezel inserts, were interchangeable. So if you got tired of having a blue and red bezel on your GMT Master 2, you could swap it out for a black and red Coke or a double black GMT bezel. The last watch on the left is one of my favorites. This is a 16700, also known as the Sophia Loren. Right? Why do they call it the Sophia Loren? Because when they made this watch, it was just slightly fatter than the traditional GMT Master 2. And it was only made for a few years. But it was so called the Sophia Loren because, you know, when this was nicknamed in the 80s, and that's how far back the nickname goes, because I don't think we could get away with calling this Sophia Loren today. But back in the 80s, Sophia Loren was sort of Zoftic. She was sort of voluptuous. And that was where the name Sophia Loren came for the GMT Master. Now, on the bottom row, the first watch you see is the Kermit, right? This was the first Rolex Submariner released with a green bezel. And what's important to understand about the Kermit is it features a black dial with a green aluminum bezel insert. That's your Kermit. When the Kermit was discontinued, it was replaced with the Hulk, which is not in this package, but the Hulk has a green bezel and a green dial. When the Hulk was discontinued, it was replaced with, ding, 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 the Starbucks. Why do they call it the Starbucks? Because it's got a green bezel that's ceramic, accented by a black dial. Yes, very similar to the Kermit, but two big differences. Number one, the Starbucks is a 41 millimeter Submariner case, the newest, latest, greatest, and biggest Submariner case made to date. Number two, the Starbucks has a green ceramic bezel, whereas the Kermit is an aluminum bezel insert. That's how you tell the difference. And the way you tell the Hulk is it's green on green. So it's a ceramic green bezel and a green dial. Next in the line, we've got the Rolex Submariner stainless steel and 18 karat yellow gold two-tone, AKA bluesy, right? So-called bluesy for its blue bezel and blue dial. Now, over the years, this blue dial has taken many different forms, many different lusters and colors. And one year, for a very short time, they even called it a Smurf because it had a sort of purplish lilac blue dial. This is the newest 41 millimeter Submariner bluesy. So it's a 41 millimeter stainless steel case with yellow gold accents and yellow gold bezel. Let's put this one back and go on to our next one. Here's our next cast of characters. This is the Rolex Deep Sea James Cameron. So why do they call it the James Cameron? Simply put, James Cameron literally strapped one of these onto his submarine that he took down by robot to the Mariana Trench and was able to submerge this watch at the deepest levels known to man. When it came up and they released this blue dial, they nicknamed it after James Cameron. If you'll notice, there's no reference to James Cameron anywhere on the dial, but the dial, which is called a D blue, actually, if you look closely, is not just blue, it's blue to black, which is exactly what happens when you descend past 100 feet, is the water goes from blue to black, hence the name D blue in homage or honor of James Cameron. And then our final watch is the Rolex Datejust Wimbledon. So-called Wimbledon for those regal green Roman numeral hour markers. I'm not quite sure who came up with this nickname, although Rolex is a very big sponsor of the largest tennis matches and the Grand Slam tennis matches. But the Wimbledon is unmistakable in that you always see a slate or rhodium dial with those striking green Roman numerals. That's the only way it's available, although it is available with a stainless steel bezel as opposed to a white gold fluted bezel. This happens to be a 36 millimeter Datejust, but it's also available in 41 millimeter Datejust. So this is your cast of characters for the Rolex universe. Certainly not the complete cast, but definitely some of your more flamboyant characters, some of your prettier pieces, some of your more recent releases. And I hope I've been helpful in educating you on how to identify the nuances, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Watch in the Box. Please make sure to subscribe and like to our YouTube channel, secondtime_watches, and make sure to check out our website. All of the watches you see in our videos are available for sale on our website, www.secondtime.com. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Watch in the Box. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.